Welcome to The Fulcrum Point, the podcast that explores the impact of Catholic schools in our communities, brought to you by the Fulcrum Foundation. I'm your host, Brian Callanan, and welcome to our first episode, where we are talking about foundations for the future. We're going to introduce you to what the Fulcrum Foundation is all about, and we'll explain how it's leveraging the power of Catholic education to inspire and develop a whole new generation of leaders, including teachers, students, and their families across Western Washington. So, get ready. Class is just about in session, and some very bright students are leading the way.
Hi, I'm Scarlett from St. Joseph's School in Seattle. The most important point I've learned so far in third grade is writing. This is important because I can use my creativity.
Hi, I am Benjamin from St. Joseph's School in Seattle. The most important thing I've learned so far in third grade is friends. This is important because when you fall, they have your back. Thank you.
That's our Get to the Point segment right there. Big thanks to those students from St. Joseph's in Seattle. Go Jaguars. And they're helping set up our first guest here on the Fulcrum Point, and that would be Amy Hall, Senior Advancement Director for the Fulcrum Foundation. Amy, great to talk to you.
Thank you. You too, Brian.
Well, let's jump into this. I want to put this front and center. The Fulcrum Foundation has been supporting Catholic education in Western Washington for more than 20 years. But help me out with this thought. I think the Fulcrum Foundation creates a much bigger impact than people might realize. Tell me about that.
Yeah, we do, actually. Fulcrum is indeed a remarkable impact maker. We have been a cornerstone of our Catholic schools in Western Washington now for over 2 decades. Mm-hmm. Our mission is to ensure that Catholic schools are accessible and effective in serving students and educators throughout our region.
And this goes beyond just tuition assistance. I know that's a big part of what Fulcrum does. Can you break down those different pieces?
Absolutely. Yes, definitely. Our tuition assistance is one thing that folks know us for. We provide funds for students that are need-based tuition assistance grants. And these help our students attend our Catholic schools, making the education accessible for families who may not otherwise be able to access or afford it.
Yeah. Got it. And beyond that, what else is going on?
We have a program where we provide grants and assistance to our 74 Catholic schools that strengthen their programs, their facilities, help them to remain viable, effective learning communities. This includes facility updates, technology integration, enhancing the curriculum, and ensuring just that we're meeting the needs of the school facility as well.
Got it. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to take it a next step here and just talk about your story, if I could, Amy,
sure.
Because I think you have a Catholic school story that stretches back a few decades, too, here in Western Washington. Let's talk about that, how that led you to Fulcrum and in the role that you have now.
I grew up in the Seattle area, and I was actually fortunate to attend 2 of our Catholic schools, St. Alphonsus for elementary and then Bishop Blanchette for high school.
Got it.
Following college, I began a career in the nonprofit social service sector and continued that work through graduate school until about mid-2000s, 2005, when I began my work in our Catholic school system here in Western Washington. Yeah.
What, were you teaching or what was going on?
Yeah, a few roles. I've actually had multiple roles in several of our schools. I think what has been really remarkable being at Fulcrum is I have seen both sides of the impact at the school level, and then now having the opportunity to support that from the professional staff side as well. So as a teacher, I benefited from curriculum and technology enhancements in my schools, both in and out of the classroom. And then as an administrator, enrolling families in our schools, I witnessed firsthand the joyful elation many families would express when they learned that tuition assistance was available.
That's a big deal, yeah.
To make their Catholic school dream more within reach. Mm-hmm. And then as a mom, my husband and I have chosen Catholic education for our own children. So I'm just deeply grateful to the teachers and coaches, mentors who have supported my own family and been instrumental in my children's growth and development.
Yeah, sounds like a big circle here that led you back to Fulcrum for sure. I did want to dive into something with you that has always baffled me because I've seen these stats over the year. Definitely this year, I saw this one jumped out at me. The Pew Research Center published this survey that showed 62% of Washington adults, we're talking about 3.8 million people here, say they never or seldom attend church or religious services compared to the national rate of 49%. But here in Western Washington, we have seen it happen here. Catholic education is growing at rates that really haven't been seen in decades. I wanted to talk about this. Why is that happening in our very secular state? What is attracting so many people to Catholic education?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say there's multiple reasons for the rising interest in our schools. Catholic schools are recognized for their high academic standards and focusing on educating the whole child, maybe in a smaller, more personalized setting often. I think many parents see Catholic schools as offering a rigorous preparation for college or future careers, but also the emphasis on moral and ethical development is something parents value, even if they're not practicing Catholics. So families are often drawn to the sense of community we find in our schools, shared values that are promoted, and we welcome families from diverse religions or non-religious backgrounds. And families are often seeking structure and values-based education, and they find this appealing.
I think so, too. And I really saw this take off, I think, during the pandemic when a lot of public schools were shutting down. I know this was a struggle for every educator out there, but I feel like that might have been the beginning. A lot of people were looking for schools that were open, were looking to connect with these different communities. Is that when this kind of started? Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I think we definitely experienced significant growth during the pandemic. We were able to adapt pretty quickly and respond to the ever-changing regulations. Our schools are fairly nimble, and they were allowed to reopen for in-person learning when it was safe to do so, which addressed, many parents' desire for some sense of normalness in a crazy time.
As much as we could try. I know that was tough for so many families out there all over the place. Amy, one big part of the attraction of today's Catholic schools in Western Washington is innovation. So many different programs and projects that Fulcrum is supporting out there. Tell us about some of those.
Our emphasis on innovation has made our Catholic schools even more attractive to families and educators. Our schools are dedicated to equipping students with critical 21st century skills. This may include technology, STEM, focus on the arts. We are also very dedicated to ensuring that our schools remain inclusive and diverse. We're continually seeking innovative opportunities to support our schools in their equity work.
Okay.
We actually at Fulcrum have a partnership with the Fulcrum Foundation. We created this program that we call the Beecraft Scholars Program.
I've heard a little bit of it. Tell me about this. Yeah.
This came about in 2020, and it's an equity-driven scholarship program. The Beecraft Scholars provides kind of a pathway of access to Catholic education while partnering with schools to foster a culture of belonging with a focus on Black and African American families and children. We invite cohorts of kindergartners every year to come in, and then we make a 9-year commitment to their families to provide an annual scholarship and then many opportunities for fostering community and engagement along the way.
Wow, that's quite a program there.
It's been pretty signature for us and grows all the time. So we're very blessed.
Yeah.
There's also just a number of innovative ways that we're supporting our educators.
Okay.
I think my favorite example is...
As a past educator yourself. Yeah, tell us about it.
This was not around when I was a new educator.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would have loved it even more. But we have a partnership with our Office for Catholic Schools, and we've been identifying facilities such as old convents or other facilities on our campuses that can be renovated to offer affordable housing for young teachers to live in a community environment with peer educators. It offsets the rising cost of living in our region and really makes a teacher's salary more sustainable.
That's a fascinating idea. So bringing them in so they have a place to live, hopefully near the school or something along those lines.
Absolutely, yeah. And then they get the opportunity to live in a sense of community and learn from each other and their new experiences.
Wow, that sounds incredible. Let me switch gears a little bit with you here, Amy, because I wanted to talk about this idea of the meaning of the word fulcrum, because it's the support on which a lever moves, right? It's to lift something. And you are leveraging support from all kinds of people, leaders, donors, all across our region here to uplift Catholic education. I wanted to talk about how that funding happens, because this is an important part of this. And also, there's a celebration coming up where I think the Archbishop is going to recognize a few of the top funders out there. Can you talk about that piece? This is a big part of why Fulcrum's here and the work that it's doing in our community.
Certainly. Yeah, Fulcrum, we embody that name by serving as a pivotal support system, leveraging resources from donors, from our community to uplift our resources for Catholic education. We're able to do this transformative work through the commitment of many generous donors and volunteers as well, who have entrusted us with their gifts and their talents. It's pretty humbling to know that we're supported by thousands of alumni and parents, community members, and others who give gifts to Fulcrum of all sizes. We also work with some charitable foundations and businesses to partner both for support and thought partnership. We do indeed have a signature fundraising event coming up. We call
Just so it turns out.
So it turns out. Mm-hmm. We call that the Celebration of Light. And this is kind of our flagship gala every year that really raises millions of dollars to support our work throughout the year.
That's
all
a big
of our
event.
programs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It certainly is. Pretty spectacular night celebrating and supporting all of our schools, families, and folks from the community, about 1,100 of our closest friends. So
that sounds like
quite a party.
Quite a party.
It is for sure. And then, as you mentioned, at this event, it's our tradition to honor one individual or family with something we call the Archbishop's Award. It's a pretty prestigious recognition honoring those who have made a remarkable difference in advancing Catholic education in our archdiocese. Mm-hmm. This year's award will be presented to Chuck and Yvonne Piggott to honor their tireless investment of time and resources.
They've been doing that for years around our community.
Six decades. So we look forward to having the Piggott family joining us, along with leaders from many of the organizations that they have championed over the years. So join us in Seattle on January 31.
That's when it's happening, right at the end of January. That's going to be a great event. Amy, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's an opportunity I'm grateful for.
Up next, we're going to hear from the Superintendent of Catholic Schools, Nicholas Ford, about the larger impact of Catholic education on Western Washington and a few things that might surprise you about those schools. But first, let's get back to the point with some insights from some of our local students.
Hi, I am Ford from St. Joseph's School in Seattle. The most important point I've learned so far in 4th grade is learning. This is important because I want to get into a good high school and college. Thank you.
Hi, I am Kate from St. Joseph's School in Seattle. The most important point I've learned so far in 7th grade is that making mistakes is okay. This is important because making mistakes is a key part of the learning process. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Fulcrum Point. This is the podcast that is all about Catholic schools in our communities. And I have as my next guest the guy who's running the show. I'm talking about the Superintendent of Catholic Schools, Nicholas Ford. Nicholas, thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks, Brian, for having me.
All right. When I say running the show, this is a pretty big show we're talking about here. 74 schools from preschool to 12th grade, more than 21,000 students covering 25,000 square miles across Western Washington. A lot to be proud of there, I'm sure, but it's a lot of work. I wanted you to tell us about what it's like doing this job, your vision for it, and what motivates you to do it.
Probably the simplest analogy is if you've ever taken a family picture, it's a lot like that. We are a family of 74 schools, but trying to get everyone to look in the same direction at a time really takes something inspirational.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what the Office for Catholic Schools and our school partners really find a way of gathering around. And it's that core mission of creating an encounter with Christ in our classrooms, but that allows our schools to thrive academically. When we think about kind of our vision for our schools, we're looking for schools that do create that encounter with Christ, that have a strong Catholic identity, but that really are excelling our students in academics, where we have strong leadership, inspirational teachers, and sustainable schools, and thinking about creative ways for funding, thinking about creative ways to continue to innovate. That's really where we look forward to.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of how you came into this role. I'm hearing a few abouts there. There's some Canadian in there. I know it. I can hear it. You were telling me a little bit about your background before we recorded this portion here, Nicholas, and I wanted to talk about that. Grew up in a family of 6 kids. Is that right?
Oh, there's 7 of us.
7.
I got 6 siblings, 2 brothers, 4 sisters. We grew up in Eastern Canada, in the province of New Brunswick.
That's a pretty big. I mean, we're talking about like a CYO basketball team, and you have 2 subs. I mean, that's pretty solid. Yeah.
Yeah, we were the best. We call it soccer baseball team on the block.
Okay, I like it. I like it. That's great.
Yeah, so we grew up in a big family, and Catholic education wasn't an institution in Eastern Canada. So I grew up going to public schools, but grew up wanting to be a school teacher. Wanted to be a school teacher from the time I was in 4th grade. I came out to Seattle as a sailor and was introduced to Catholic schools after having served in Catholic schools in Tanzania, and started as a teacher at Our Lady of Fatima in Magnolia, and became principal there, served there for 5 years as principal, and then went down to St. Patrick, and then eventually had this opportunity to serve as superintendent for our Catholic schools. And it's been a tremendous honor to be in this position, but something that I really feel passionate about. I have 3 young kids myself, 7, 5, and 3 at home.
Oh, wow.
Who are in our Catholic schools. And, I wake up every day trying to figure out how do I make our Catholic schools stronger for them, for their classmates, and for each of the 21,000 students that we serve.
Yeah, really, I appreciate you sharing that background with me, Nicholas. And I was really inspired to work on this podcast because I see Catholic education in so many different ways, making an impact across Western Washington, and this is way beyond the borders of a parish or any church community out there. Can you talk about how Catholic education is impacting Western Washington and why that matters to people who might be Catholic and people who might not be?
I think why it matters to everybody is because of the values that we stand on. I think when I think about our Catholic faith, and I think those core values are values that so many of us share, and they are what anchor us in the classroom every single day. To me, that matters. We are in a society that continues to fragment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our schools as institutions are one of the last places where we come together regardless of political beliefs, religious beliefs. And the Catholic school in particular, I think really fosters this sense of collaboration and a need to dialogue and a need to think critically and to engage people who we might not see eye to eye to, but to do it through a common framework, a common language. And I think it's why it matters, because I think we need to engage that conversation as a society, and I think our Catholic schools are a great starting point for evidence of that.
I hear what you're saying, and it almost brings me to this idea of belonging, because I think that's a big part of what Catholic schools are all about. I was talking with Amy Hall in the early part of this podcast just about the communities that Catholic schools build up. Can you talk to me about that piece? Because I think that's an important part of it, too. It's not just a school. There's a community that you belong to. I really feel that. I know my kids went through Catholic education, and we really felt that. Can you talk about that belonging part and why that's so important?
Yeah, I think about belonging, and I frame it against welcoming. Brian, when you went to your in-laws for the first time, I know what it was like. I was welcomed.
Yeah.
But it was difficult to go to the refrigerator and grab a glass to drink.
Sure, right.
I think when belonging happens is you feel like you can go into the fridge, take what you need, and you're also invited to help out with the dishes and do everything.
Right.
You're part of the family. And that's when people really want to be part of it. They're not just welcomed. It's not just, a courteousness, but it's saying, roll up your sleeves. You're part of this all. You're part of our successes. We're with you when we have challenges. I think by having a sense of belonging, our families are drawn to the sense that they recognize they can contribute. One of the really neat programs that we've instituted over the last few years is the B-Craft Scholars Program.
Yeah. Amy mentioned this a little bit, but tell me more about it.
So B-Craft Scholars is such a unique program in that it's really kind of upending the way that we look at scholarship and seeing families as partners, and that we're investing in their relationship, recognizing that they're also contributing to our communities, and being able to think about what this partnership and commitment looks like over the course of 9 years in our Catholic schools.
Mm-hmm.
And really thinking about that it's not just about being, but it is about, they're bringing in their voice into leading the community. And that's one of the key things that Alana Bell, who's the program director, has really done, is she brings the families in and they lead workshops for the community. They take part in everything. And it's that wraparound that is so important.
Really trying to bring in African-American students and trying to, again, like you say, welcome everybody into the community.
It's welcoming everybody, and it's recognizing that each has a voice to offer and that we are stronger in our diversity as we seek to find that, and that we all have something to contribute. And it's not just about diversity, but it is about listening and learning from each other and recognizing how do we do that together.
Yeah. Thank you for breaking that down. That's certainly something that people might not know about that program with B-Craft there, but I wanted to talk about other things that might surprise people to learn about Catholic education in Western Washington.
I do think one of the things that's probably most surprising for most people is our diversity. We're geographically diverse. We talked about the 25,000 square miles.
You're not joking, yeah.
Bellingham to Vancouver, all the way up to Port Angeles. Cascades out is us. But it's also, we serve the demographics of Western Washington. When we do our demographic profile, we reflect the demographics of Western Washington, which I'm really proud of. We serve families from all different, socioeconomic backgrounds and really trying to reduce barriers. And then programmatically, we're trying to serve a wider spectrum of neurodiversity. As a parent of a child with Down syndrome, this is a point of passion for me, is to really think that our schools are inclusive, not only to a narrow range of neurodiversity, but that we do strive to serve students who are gifted and talented, that bring things to the classroom where they are challenged to learn, but also to serve students with special needs, with intellectual, with developmental disabilities, and create space in our classrooms. We still have a ways to go, but we're working towards that.
That's really interesting, because I know that's been a debate within the public school system quite a bit, and just this feels like something that I guess Catholic schools are really trying to take on, providing for people who learn at all different levels here.
Yeah, I do think that's a component. I think the other part too, and this also, people forget about this. Over 30% of our students are not Catholic. So it really is, something that we do look at. How do we welcome all faith traditions, those who are practicing, those who may not be practicing today, and recognizing that each has something to contribute and each has something to receive through that encounter with Christ, and that goes out into the world, and gospel values are really espoused that way.
This is the balance that I think so many different Catholic educators talk about, Nicholas, because you want to be true to a faith, of course, but I always think of Catholic with the small c, which means universal, right? Mm-hmm. And reaching out. And that feels like what you're saying, too. You're trying to figure out something where you're reaching out to all different people of all different faiths, I think, and inviting them into school.
I think that's it. We're saying, this is our belief system. This is how we go through. This is how we look at the world. We welcome you to think about it like this. And we think there's a story to tell there. And we want people to be part of it, because we think at the end of the day, our goal is to bring, the gospel out to the world. And we think that through the values that we learn as people do that in their own professional lives, once they graduate from our schools, that becomes their lived reality.
Yeah. If you want to give them the gospel, you got to open the doors first. I hear what you're saying there. I wanted to talk a little bit more about, I guess, what's next for Catholic schools in Western Washington, because we've been talking a little bit about some of the innovative programs that have been going on here, but can you talk to us about that larger piece about what's happening with Catholic schools right now?
We are at an exciting inflection point, I think, in the story of Catholic schools here in Western Washington. We have just experienced our 4th consecutive year of growth in the Archdiocese, which is something that we're all tremendously proud about. And we recognize what are some of the challenges that we're trying to find. So I think our goals right now are trying to find the innovative ways to continue to grow our curriculum and our instructional offerings to ensure that we continue to thrive academically, that we continue to root ourselves in a strong faith formation, but then thinking creatively about the funding challenge of Catholic schools, advocating for more funding options, trying to think through, as we partner with the Fulcrum Foundation, how do we support schools? How do we support educators? I myself am a beneficiary of Fulcrum's generosity. I came up through their Leadership Academy and have benefited through that
and
leadership.
Look at you today.
Yeah. So
right.
This is proof of concept. Yeah. And then I think thinking creatively about how do we fund the gap. We have an innovative housing project that forges communities, offers workforce housing for our teachers and our educators. Tremendous pieces. So I think it's putting it together. But I think I'm humble enough to know that I don't have all the answers myself, and that's part of the beauty of working with 74 school leaders and over 2,500 educators who are all thinking about this. And then certainly, I think one of the pillars that we stand on with the Fulcrum Foundation is that we see each other as thought partners.
Yeah.
And we balance, what are best practices in other fields? What can we bring into our schools today? So I don't think we have answers, but I think our eye is always forward looking while thinking about our traditions and how do we preserve our traditions while being ready to create new ones as we move forward.
And I wanted to touch on certainly a little bit further your partnership with the Fulcrum Foundation. I mean, after all, this podcast is called The Fulcrum Point. Let's figure this out. Can you tell me about that? Because I think you mentioned thought partners. I think that's a great way to express it. But tell me about that important relationship there and how that helps grow schools and how it helps teachers, families, students, all that.
The Fulcrum Foundation's been such a critical partner for our schools over the last 2+ decades. Part of it is the thought partnership that they provide our office and our leadership, but really it's in the funding mechanisms. And I think their support of students and their tuition assistance has continued to lower barriers to families from different economic backgrounds who are able to now access our Catholic schools. They have been instrumental with school partnership grants and really creating innovative, healthy, safe learning environments for families, for students, for our educators, that they can come in and really see. We are stewards of buildings that were built generations ago and trying to be able to maintain and care for them, but also putting it forward. And then lastly is really an investment in people, an investment in our school leaders and in educators that are inspirational, that drive excellence in the classroom, because at the end of the day, they are the most important people who deliver the education to our students. They are the touch points every day. They care for those students. They know their families and they know their grandparents. Mm-hmm. It creates that environment. And so the investment in those and our educators and our staffs is so critical to the success and the growth that we're seeing in our Catholic schools right now.
And I just wanted to wrap up with you, Nicholas, by talking about, again, what's next. You talked about a little bit of the future of Catholic schools here, but as a superintendent of so many schools and looking at so many different students and educators, what is that one thing that keeps you up at night? What is that thing that motivates you to come to work and really do what you do here? Because I know there's a lot on your plate when we talk about all the schools you're covering there, but what is it that drives you?
I think what drives me is knowing that every day there is a student that we can't accept, that we have not been able to say yes to. And so I think for me, for my team, what keeps me up is trying to figure out, how do we say yes to every single student who desires a Catholic education? How do we say yes to every single family, whether that's because of finances, whether that's because of their geography, whether that's because of the programs or the needs of their child? How can we say yes to more? Because I think we can, but that's the journey ahead for us.
And that's where the Fulcrum Foundation is going to help out, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much. Nicholas Ford, Superintendent of Catholic Schools. Really appreciate you joining me.
Brian, it's been a pleasure today. Thank you so much.
I hope you've enjoyed this first episode of The Fulcrum Point, the podcast that's shedding some light on the impact of Catholic schools in our region. It's brought to you by the Fulcrum Foundation. And if you'd like to learn more about their work, head to fulcrumfoundation.org. I'm Brian Callanan. It's been great to listen with you and learn. See you next time.